Hi, I'm Monica, and today I'm going to be doing a lecture-based video on for my final project for Intro to Addiction Study class. The topic of my final project is effects of psychedelics on addiction, and specifically alcohol dependency or alcohol addiction. Um, just the outline of how this lecture is going to be based on is and I'm looking at my phone right here because I have information there. Is first I'm going to be talking about what psychedelics are and talking a little bit about classic psychedelics that are out there, and then I'll give a little bit of background information on the history of psychedelics and why it was made illegal in 1970s. And then I'm going to be and then I'll talk about the research behind psychedelics. So why are so many people, scientists, spending so much time and money and resources on studying psychedelics? So the benefits of it, and then go a little bit in depth about psychedelic as a treatment option for addiction. So I'm going to be presenting a little bit of neuroscience facts here, and then talk about the unknown side of psychedelics in our research right now and the limitation of research studies around it. And then finally, I'm going to be talking a little bit about people who should be careful and honestly people who should avoid using psychedelics according to science and as of right now. And yeah, with the current research out there. So let's start. So what are psychedelics? Psychedelics are a class, and I'm like looking at my screen right here because I have a lot of information that I'm going to be talking about. So psychedelics are a class of psychoactive substances that alter perception, mood, and thought. So psychedelics have been used in various culture throughout history for a wide range of purposes, like spiritual healing, religious practices. Um, for example, in a lot of indigenous culture in America, psychedelics like ayahuasca and peyote, I think I'm saying that right, I'm not sure, have been used for centuries to for religious ceremonies, and also in South Asian culture like in India and in Nepal, psychedelic mushrooms have been used as a form of spiritual healing. Today, in modern society and modern culture, a lot of people use psychedelics for recreational purposes. And what that means is to explore like altered sense of consciousness. And like I said earlier, psychedelics are used to change the perception of reality and time. So that is why people nowadays use it recreationally for that purpose. And additionally, there has been a lot of growing research on the benefits of psychedelics to treat mental health mental health disorders like depression, ADHD, anxiety, and also addiction. Specifically, there has been many research on treating alcohol addiction and nicotine addiction. The research is also shifting to looking at other drugs like heroin and cocaine. So now I guess I can talk about what are some classic psychedelics. Just give me a second. Yeah. So classic psychedelics are a subset of psychedelics that are known for their profound and long-lasting effects on consciousness. Some of the most well-known classic psychedelics are LSD or lysergic acid diethylamide, psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushroom, mescaline, which is found in peyote, the cactus, and some of the other plants, and I think also some of the some animals. It's on there, and ayahuasca, which is also a plant. And so these, like others hallucinogens, these classic psychedelics are also used to induce alteration in perception of time and space and self. So it creates a lot of what does psychedelic does to people. It creates a lot of visual and auditory hallucination. It changes the mood. It changes mood. And it also gives rise to a lot of mystical and spiritual experiences. So psychedelics was not, now psychedelics is illegal, and it was made illegal in the 1970s, but psychedelics was not illegal before that in the United States and in a lot of other places as well. But during starting with 1940s, there was a lot of research going on about the potential benefits of psychedelics and what that can, how we can use it to favor humanity and to favor us to treat mental health diseases and other type of addictions. And so, but it was made illegal. Psychedelics were made illegal in 1970s in the United States and in many other countries. And there is no one clear reason why it was made illegal. There are a combination of factors, which are some social factors, political pressure, concerns about the risk of psychedelics and the adverse effect of psychedelics towards the use of the different drugs, psychedelic drugs, which resulted in making psychedelics illegal. And so after the drug was made illegal, the research on psychedelics were halted. All the labs that were doing research at that time could not do research anymore on it, and LSD is a synthetic psychedelic, so it is produced in lab. Other psychedelics, like magic mushrooms, it's natural, so you get it in nature. But people stopped producing LSD legally for scientific and research purposes because it was made illegal. And psychedelics was listed as Schedule 1 drugs, which were considered to have high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use. That was what it was labeled it as. However, right now, starting from 2010 and recently, there has been a lot of renewed research and renewed interest in studying the therapeutic potentials of psychedelics. And so a lot of clinical trials and clinical studies have been emerging to study the effect of psychedelics, effect of drugs. And a lot of studies are done in universities, mostly there are a lot of research being done at NYU and Johns Hopkins University, JHU. Studies are conducting research on psychedelics on a different group of patients, participants who are, let's say, who are maybe trying to quit nicotine or quit alcohol. And so the way that they're conducting research is they're performing clinical trials, and patients are recruited there and then given psychedelics. They're also using a lot of neuroimaging studies and observational studies to study the effect of psychedelics. A lot of the research articles that I looked at for this assignment was cross-sectional survey. They're using cross-sectional survey to ask people who have used psychedelic in the past and the effect, and then surveying to see the effect of psychedelics. And sometimes it's clinical trials where they are giving psychedelics in the lab and then following that cohort of participants over 6 months or a year or 2 years. And so the reason why psychedelics are people are studying it and what is the benefit of it in addiction is that all the researches, all the research that have been, many research that have been done um, in psychedelics, specifically LSD and psilocybin, so far has led to significant positive result in treating alcohol addiction. So we know that um, we know that we know that addiction is an area where a lot of treatment of alcohol addiction is an area where a lot of effective treatment option is not available. So we definitely do have therapies and rehabilitation centers where they use different types of mechanism for the treatment of addiction, but they don't have a very high efficacy rate. And so it is very important for us as a community to study more and invest more on the research that actually have shown positive effect on treating addiction. And that is one reason why people are studying psychedelics on and its effect on addiction so much, because the studies, the clinical trials that have been conducted so far, the personal stories that people have shared, and the surveys that cross-sectional surveys researchers have done, they have found out that people who have used psychedelics have been successful for the most part in not using alcohol to a degree where it is problematic, as defined by DSM-5. So a lot of these study, when they include participants for the study for alcohol addiction in particular, their inclusion criteria is people who either self-identify to have met the DSM-5 criteria for AUD, alcohol use disorder. So a lot of people who are followed up with the study to see the effect of psychedelics, they say that they no longer meet the criteria for AUD according to DSM-5. And so that is one reason why it is so important to research further on the use of psychedelics on alcohol addiction and other type of addiction. And that is why so much research has been done right now, and a lot of scientists are spending so much time and resources on researching on it. So to talk about the addiction around psychedelic itself, like one of the reasons why psychedelics was banned in 1970 was that people are going to be dependent on psychedelics. So what are some scientific research? So we can't have like psychedelics, we can't use psychedelics to treat addiction, but then have people be dependent on psychedelics itself, like a lot of opioids, right? We use opioids to treat people with a lot of pain management and stuff like that, but then they end up being addicted to opioids. So what do we know about the addiction for psychedelics is that research has shown that psychedelics are generally considered to have low potential for addiction as compared to other drugs of abuse like opioids, stimulants, and alcohol. So, so far from the research, we know that psychedelics do not produce physical dependency, and users, they don't typically experience withdrawal symptoms from psychedelics that we see with a lot of other types of drugs. And a lot of research actually has shown that psychedelics can be anti-addictive and have anti-addictive property, but it is important to note that there hasn't been extensive amount of research done to understand the addiction behind psychedelic itself, but the research so far has shown that psychedelics are not addictive in the same way as other drugs are. So to talk about a little bit of neuroscience of how psychedelics can be used as a treatment option for addiction, is that psychedelics have the ability to produce a powerful sense of unity, interconnectedness, and empathy that can help individuals to reframe their relationship to themselves and others and the world around them. So this relates to that spiritual emotion that psychedelic produces. So a lot of people who have been given psychedelics in clinical trials and have been interviewed later on the effect of psychedelics and why they have not used alcohol later have said that psychedelics have helped them think about reframe their relationships to themselves and see how much harm can alcohol cause to their body, and can look at the bigger picture. Another thing is psychedelics have shown to increase neuroplasticity in brain. There has been research that has shown that younger adults have more neuroplasticity than older population, and young people or children, they form neural networks in a more than old people do. And so because of this, old people or older adults can have like a very rigid train of thought, and this psychedelics have shown to enhance neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connection and pathways. And so this has shown to be one of the reasons how psychedelics can be beneficial in treatment of alcohol addiction, as it can help individuals develop new coping mechanisms and new strategies for managing cravings and avoiding relapse, because a big part of relapse is people start craving alcohol and the thrill that they get from alcohol after they're addicted to it, which leads to relapse. And so forming new neural connections in the brain and increasing neural plasticity has shown to be one of the main reason that can help that has helped in people not using alcohol. Another thing that science have found is that psychedelics like psilocybin and LSD, they can promote the growth of new dendritic spine and enhance function of the existing ones, which can be beneficial in treating addiction. So the reason behind this is that alcohol use, chronic alcohol use, repeated alcohol use can change patterns in brain structure and function, which can contribute to development of or maintenance of addiction. For example, alcohol has showed to reduce in density of dendritic spines, which can impair communication between neurons and lead to cognitive deficit and other problems. And so psychedelics, on the other hand, have shown to promote the growth in these dendritic spines and enhance the function of the existing ones, like I mentioned before. Which is one way it can help in treating addiction. Another neuroscience aspect of how it can help is that there are studies that have found that psychedelics can reduce activity in this part of brain, which is called default mode network. And so that part of the brain network is hyperactive in individuals with addiction, and which is associated, DMN or default mode network is associated with self-referential thinking and craving and rumination. So a lot of research that I found, when people are put into like brain scanners who show addictive alcohol addictions, and so the function in this DMN default mode network is very rapid, so they show a lot of activity in that region. And after that, people are given psychedelics or some sort of psychedelics, and then they're put into the same scanner, and then they see a lot less activity in default mode network. And when patients are followed through and in their, I don't know, like after 5 months or something like that, and then the activity in the default mode network is less as compared to before. And so this is associated as like one area that psychedelics does play a very big role in terms of neuroscience, which has been linked to why it can help in combating addiction. So that is a little bit of neuroscience behind psychedelics and addiction. So while psychedelics have shown very promising results in treating addiction and different type of addiction, and it has had a long history of in traditional use, there are still some limitation of psychedelic research and stuff that we don't really know yet. So some of the lesser known side effects of psychedelic, which needs more research, which is not known by science yet, are: one is hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, or HPPD. This is when an individual, after they have tried psychedelics, they say that even after a long time, they still can experience persistent and distressing perceptual changes, like visual disturbance and flashing of color, or change in like some shapes of objects, even after a long time of psychedelics use. And they cannot just turn it off because it just happens naturally. So that is one of the side effects that is not really studied yet, but there are some users who have said that they've had this experience after using psychedelics. And another limitation or less known side effect of psychedelics is psychosis. While it is rare, there have been vulnerable individuals, which I'll mention the type of people who are considered vulnerable individuals and population who should not be using psychedelics. When they use psychedelics, it has shown to exacerbate their psychosis. It can act as a trigger for their psychosis, or it can also act as a trigger for schizophrenia. So that is another thing. It can lead to a healthy person can lead to showing mental health disorder like psychosis, because it can act as a trigger, and those happen usually for the vulnerable individual, which I will mention later what that means. Some other lesser known side effect of psychedelic are flashbacks. So some people experience flashbacks or reoccurrence of psychedelic experience, like in their daily basis or weekly basis, which can be very severe and which can be very powerful, and that can lead to a lot of emotional distress. Other side effect of psychedelics that are now known, that are like lesser known, but people have been talking about, is increase in heart rate, elevated blood pressure, and nausea during the state, like while people are tripping. And so when they're given psychedelics, they their heart rate, and they think that their heart rate is increased, their blood pressure is increasing, and stuff like that, which is why people who engage in these psychedelic experience, it's very important to be very careful about who you're with. Are you in like a clinical setting? Are you with someone who you can trust? And stuff like that. And some limitations of research that I found while conducting these literature reviews is that the sample size of the population in a lot of study that involves psychedelic has been is not very large. Although a lot of people initially, when they start studying participants, although the sample size starts as very big because of the inclusion criteria and other stuff, the sample size is narrowed down to like 5 people or 10 people or 15 people who are given psychedelics in a clinical trial, in a lab. So that is definitely not a very large sample size for us to base our findings and conclusively in. So definitely a large number of participants needs to be researched. The effect of psychedelics and addiction needs to be researched on a very large number of participants before it can be used in therapies and for therapeutic purposes. Another limitation in research of psychedelics is that it's very hard to blind the psychedelic research and not be biased, not have like bias play a role in it. So that is another limitation, and something that researchers need to figure out. So some people who should be careful about using psychedelics, or by science it's actually not advised to use psychedelics. So people who have psychosis or schizophrenia are definitely not advised to engage in psychedelics. The reason for this is psychedelics can induce experience that can resemble or are similar to symptoms of psychotic disorders like schizophrenia. So this is why people with history of these diseases, severe mental health diseases, are not advised to use psychedelics. Another is people who have a family history of psychosis or schizophrenia, because these mental health or bipolar disorder. So because these diseases are very genetic and are genetically passed down, have a very high tendency of genetically being passed down. So that's why people who, although they're healthy right now and haven't shown like episodes of bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, they're not, but have a family history of those mental health disorders, severe mental health diseases, are not advised to use psychedelics, because psychedelics, like I said, can resemble symptoms of psychotic disorders, and so can act as trigger for those severe mental health diseases. And another population group that are not advised to taking psychedelics are individuals with certain medication who are taking certain medications like antidepressant, because antidepressant also, we don't fully understand how an antidepressant work, what type of neuroscience effect does it have, what kind of neurotransmitter does it interact with. We don't fully understand the science behind antidepressants. So people who are taking some sort of antidepressants are also not advised to use psychedelics. So with that being said, psychedelics, it holds a very promising area for potential treatment for addiction, which a lot of people struggle with, and for also mental health disorder. And so a lot of research, we're still in like the very beginning phase of psychedelic research. That's why it cannot like be used right away, in my opinion, in as a treatment option. But with further research to fully understand the therapeutic potential of psychedelic, I hope it can be a effective tool that we can use to treat addiction and substance use disorders and mental health diseases. So a lot of research needs to be done in that field. And I think, just a side note, I'm pretty sure Oregon recently passed a bill in using psychedelics in therapy in therapy sessions, like guided therapy sessions. And so I think we can use that data to really see how psychedelics actually work in therapy, whether it be for mental health disorders or for addiction therapy. And let's see what happens. But definitely more research needs to be done in this field. Thanks.